So the next presentation is leading on to more of, I guess, a bit further down the track. So obviously one part of our plan with property development is to build capital and build capital quickly through development profits. And then eventually you'll reach a point, if you're not already there, is where you do have a substantial amount of capital and you want to start allocating some of that capital towards cash flow. Now, I do go into this more later in the presentation. Timing of that is a very important thing. And that remains true for all of development, really. Timing is very important. The timing of when you go into a project and when you exit a project, the timing of when you go from doing one project to multiple projects, the timing of when you go from doing 1 into 2s to 1 into 5 to 1 into 10s. There's many things we can do, but are not necessarily the best thing for us to do in the longer term. For example, right now, I could go and buy a 100 lot subdivision. Would I get through it? Probably, with a lot of grey hair and probably lose a lot of hair in the meantime. But I'd probably get out the other end. But would that be the smartest decision for me at this point in time? No, I don't have the expertise. I haven't earned the right to go to that just yet. And while I may complete it, it would have a massive opportunity cost. The same remains true for shifting into cash flow too quickly as well. So I will touch on that more a little bit later, but I just wanted to start with that idea in mind that moving into cash flow, the timing of it is just as important as many of the other things. So what I've done here is basically created a bit of a stage 1, stage 2 with the boarding house. So most of you, I think, would have heard of the mini boarding houses by now, Class 1Bs. For those that haven't, just very quickly, they can be built on a standard residential block of land. You do not need any special zoning. Different councils have different rules around them and different states have different rules around them. But in Brisbane, for example, you can have 5 unrelated tenancies in the one property, which is obviously a very big plus in terms of the amount of rent that you can get. For example, this one here, this is in Banyo, a normal 4-bedroom house, off the top of my head, I don't really know, but let's just say a brand new one might get $700 a week in rent, at a guess. This one, I should know that off the top of my head. This one, we get about $1,500 to $1,600 a week in rent. So there's obviously a massive upside to them. They are a very specialized build and they're a very different property to manage and to run. So I will get into the presentation. So this is basically from how I created the project in the first place to how it's going now up and running and sharing, I guess, the pros, the cons, the real figures, the realities, and everything else. Again, guys, please make this interactive. Pop in questions as we go. I've noticed people putting out their hand. That doesn't really pop up very obviously for me here. It's better if you put in the question. So put in the question into the questions area and I'll check in on it from time to time and answer any questions you've got. So this one came from a splitter project, which came from a letter. It was a great buy. And for the guys that are still trying to find their first deal or maybe don't have faith in letters, personally, I bought more deals off letters than I bought any other way. This particular one, this is just a good example of motivated seller. And once you find the motivated seller, normally there's not a whole lot of skill involved in getting a great price. The biggest part is actually being willing to ask for the low price, which is the part where most people have the fear of rejection or embarrassed or whatever else comes up for them, and they never actually ask for the low price. So this one, the conversation on the phone literally went something along the lines of this. Hi, I received your letter, just wondering what you're offering. And I said, oh, look, in the area, I'm offering around $550. And he said, oh, no, I'd be needing more than that, but no more than $580. And I already knew at $580 it was a great buy. And I said, well, look, we're not that far apart. How about I come out and have a look? We'll see where we end up. And long story short, I said, well, look, you're going to spend 15 grand in agency fees anyway. How about we just meet in the middle, 565? And he said, sounds good, let's do it. That's how complicated the conversation was. That's how much inverted commas talent was required. It wasn't. It was just that I'd done the work sending many, many letters to be the person that got that phone call from that motivated seller. And that was that. So this was a splitter project, which in its own right would have been great. Don't know why that's getting lost off the bottom, but the expected profit was about 140,000 if we actually went through with the full split and sold both blocks of land. They actually ended up selling for 410 was the block I sold for 410, and then I decided to keep a block because the location was very good for this style of property. So the first key thing is there was I created cheap land. If you just buy a block of land at a retail price and put one of these things on top of it, you're not going to get a great cash on cash return. So the first key to success with this was either buying cheap land or creating cheap land. And I don't remember exactly what it was, but I think it worked out that the cost base for that second block of land ended up being something like 260 or 280,000, which is obviously a very cheap block of land when they were selling for 410 at the time, and now 450, 460 or something. So this is the location. So you can see 63 Langton Street in Banyo, not far from the city. Brisbane Airport, DFO, Eagle Farm, so lots of jobs in Eagle Farm. And well, that's the key thing is with these things, you want to be near jobs, you want to be near public transport. That's the really crucial thing. There was a long time they were sort of referred to as student accommodation. By far, students are not the main tenant for these things. They call them key workers. And more closely zoomed in, 603 metres from the train station, about 500 metres from industry. There's Earnshaw State College, so for young teachers, Australian Catholic University, again, young lecturers as well as students. And there's also a park there just for lifestyle. So there was a lot of stuff around this location, all within walking distance, which was really, really handy. And obviously walking distance to the train station makes pretty much everything very handy, particularly the city and the airport. Let's see, we've got a question. How much for the construction cost for the new boarding house? You're jumping way ahead, Chris. We'll get there. I am wondering what is the soft and hard expense on the feasibility. I wonder what the soft and hard expenses are. Soft costs refer to basically paper pushing. Hard expenses refer to things where physical work is actually done. So sewer, water, demolition, all those sorts of things. So soft cost is your town planners, your engineers, your conveyancing, all that sort of stuff. But look, if it was a presentation on that splitter, I would give it more detail there, but that's not really the main focus of the presentation, so I won't go too far into that. Did the owner own both lots? Yeah, it was a splitter, so there was a house straddling the property. It was an 810 square metre block, two 405 metre lots, and so we demolished the house and split the property. Okay. So, ground floor. So there are many different ways you can skin this cat. When I did this, so at the moment they've really become quite a craze. There is a lot of these going up now, and within our community, there's been a number of them done now. When I did this one, I was one of the first within our immediate community to do one. So there wasn't as much track record with them, and we didn't have as much knowledge. So now I'm considering building my second one. There's a lot of other things that I'm taking into consideration, which may result in a different build. So in this scenario here, I built the biggest thing I could fit on this block. Is probably the simplest way to do it. I had concerns over their long-term feasibility and their viability. What if the rules changed? So I basically wanted to build a house that it was possible to convert it back into a standard dwelling if I needed to. That was kind of the concern I had at the time. Now, having proven the concept and there being so much more proof in it, I don't have that concern or that fear. So that wouldn't be driving my decision process. But I also did the ROI on the smaller versions and the bigger versions at the time. And my logic at the time was the ROI and the cash on cash was relatively similar. So, I'll just build the superior product and hope that, think that will give better tenant retention and faster filling of vacancies. Whether or not that theory is correct, I don't know. But certainly a lot of evidence at the moment supporting the idea of the smaller ones, depending on the situation. So you can see here, there is the entrance on the porch in the bottom right, comes into the common area. There's two garages. There's a very big flat in the bottom. That one, I forget the square meters, but I think it's like 55 square meters. Clearly the premium. And then we have the upper level. Stairs go up in the middle, and then all of these are relatively almost exactly the same size. I think from memory, they're all about 35 square meters each. And you'll notice the downstairs one has the large bathroom. You do need to have a unit with universal access for wheelchairs. And then we've got the 4 bedrooms upstairs. Just check this question we've got here. How did the bank value the rooming houses? Another good question. Sally, jumping ahead of me, but good questions. Keep them coming, guys. I do have a section on that a little bit later. Very important question. So just some pics to keep it a little bit more interesting for the senses. So that was after we demolished the property on the left, and on the right, you can see the house had already been built by the neighbour from the block of land that we sold as it was being built. Yeah, I went with Affordable Housing Company. They're one of the pioneers in this. And in terms of their build time, they are incredibly quick. Before and after is a bit challenging and a bit slow. You know, the design process and getting to the actual point of building is quite slow. And finalizing small defects at the end, slow and frustrating. However, the build was exceptional and exceptionally fast. So we made the decision to add some extra storage units. Admittedly, I stole this idea from Sue Hannay, and I'd been looking for how we could add some more storage areas that we could rent out, and these ones we managed to stick in underneath the stairs and make lockable doors on the outside. They go for an extra $5 a week, which is handy, and it's also an area that you can store your own stuff on the property. So, financing, very good question, not straightforward. It is, and there is no blanket answer I can give as to what the golden solution is either. So if you're going residential finance, the benefit is you can get a higher loan to value ratio, lower cash requirement, but the valuation becomes a big question mark because they're going to value it based on comparing it to the local area. So in my scenario, my valuation came in way short. In that area for Banyo, 4-bedroom houses, because that's what they class this as, because the downstairs flat they considered the living area, they considered to be worth about $730. I think they valued it at. Which, when you consider the land value of $410 and the construction cost about $450 for this one, because I went the very big one, it's obviously much higher than that. Now, if you go commercial val, yeah, it's not an easy answer either. So commercial, there is some now looking at doing higher LVRs, which is good. I'm exploring that option at the moment, but typically with commercial, you're looking at a lower LVR, much higher cash component, but they do value it on the rental income. Residential, they're just doing it as comparables as to what the house in that area sells for, which is typically lower. Not always. Sue Hannay, for example, hers out near the bay, no issues with the value because the value of the houses there were much higher. The value of the houses in Banyo much lower. Similarly, now some of the guys doing some of the low set ones are again having issues with valuations. So look, it's not an easy answer. It's not a straightforward answer. It is a little bit of a minefield where yeah, guidance through that probably plays a big part. So before I move on, I'll give the opportunity for, oh, this is a dangerous one, I'll give the opportunity for questions on finance, but please accept that it isn't a cookie cutter answer. And yeah, it's not a one size fits all measure, but I'll just extend that, that courtesy now if anyone does want to ask a specific question on finance. So I guess the bottom line is you can finance them both ways, depending on your location. And I think whether you choose to go high set or low set, the location I think should definitely play a big part in your decision-making process there, because that's going to determine the sort of finance you'll be able to get, and then also your cash requirements as well. So a few things here. Only 2 garages for the whole construction. Yes, only 2. There we had a lot of available street parking, ample street parking. And the other thing too is not everyone that hires these sorts of this or leases this sort of accommodation has a car. That's why the access to public transport is very important. But yes, parking is important. But in that scenario, we were with that style of build, you couldn't really do much more parking on site. But that was also a calculated decision because we had a lot of street parking available there. How hard is the building approval with Brisbane City Council? That part's easy. The building approval part's easy. Seems it would be best to have a cashed up JV party investor. Not if you're planning on holding it. You don't really want a JV partner involved in it long term. Maybe short term, but you want to have an exit strategy for paying them out is my suggestion there. Actually, I'll go back to the BA part. It was easy because we were working with builders that were experts in this design. It is a fickle thing. You want to definitely be working with people that know this stuff inside and outside. Otherwise, yes, there are a lot of tripwires. Give you an example. If you put in a sink in the wrong place, you can run into trouble. Because then all of a sudden your kitchenette is classed as a kitchen. Now they are fully self-contained, and now you're paying contributions on all 5 rooms, which is 30 grand a piece. So things to consider. Like I mentioned before, is this the right time for you? You know, in the short term, it actually can be a hindrance on your serviceability. I'm not going to go, we don't have time to go into that fully here, but that is a reality, especially if you go with Resi Finance. The bank, if you just go for a loan the following week, the bank isn't going to go, oh, you're getting $1,500 a week in rent. Fantastic. That's great for your serviceability. That's not how they look at it, because they can't fathom it. They'll go, well, no, that's not sustainable. A normal house in that area rents for $750, so that's what we use in our calculations. Until you've got it going through your profit and loss at the end of a financial year, they are a hindrance. And I would say a full year in your profit and loss, they can be a hindrance depending on how it's financed. So that's a big thing to consider. They're not a thing to throw into your portfolio, I would suggest, at the very start of your journey. It's a thing for once you've built up a fairly good capital base and that it's not going to slow you down. Chasing top rentals, is it smart? Well, this goes for any rental property. The difference between $290 a week versus $300 a week in for one of the rooms, $522 per annum, 1.85 weeks in rent. So if it's going to cost you more than 1.85 weeks to wait for that $300, it wasn't worth it. So, you know, in ours, for example, we had all 5 rooms rented within 2 weeks of putting it on the market, and that was with another one in the area with a room up for rent. But since then, every single one of those rooms has had rental increases with tenants that either stayed and had rental increases, or with new tenants that came in and rental increases. So that's just a big thing to keep in mind. Does size matter? Look, yes, it matters. But the big rooms in these places, excluding that, when I say big, I don't mean the big one we have downstairs. It's, you know, almost double the size. But the difference between 35 square meters and 30 square meters, basically no difference in rent. Difference between 30 and 25, you know, again, it's actually a relatively small difference in rent. Yeah, and what is right for the area? Yeah, that's for the valuation side. You know, if properties in your area, you know, 2-story properties are selling for 600,000, and you know you're expecting to get a val of 800,000 to fund your thing, you know, that's obviously not going to work out too well when the valuation comes back. So you've just got to be realistic about property values in your area for what you're actually aiming to achieve. Fire needs are included in the build cost, I guess. Well, depends on the builder you go through. So yes, there are very strict fire requirements with building these, because obviously, you know, think of children's backpackers and other rooming accommodation scenarios. There have been some catastrophes, some tragedies. So yes, there are strict rules. If you're dealing with a builder that is an expert in these, that should all be a part of it. I certainly would not recommend building one of these with a builder that hasn't done one before. That's asking for trouble. So everything revealed, no secrets, guys. This is a profit and loss statement from my boarding house in Banyo. Now, to be fair, when I did this was March this year, by the looks of things. So I annualized it. And you can see the highlighted column there is the results I'd received up to that point in time in March, annualized. The real results are actually ever so slightly better because we had some rental increases and some rental renewals, which were at a higher rate as well. So I've left out the interest from the bank. And the reason why I've left that out is because everyone's scenario is going to be different and everyone's interest rate is going to be different, et cetera, et cetera. They might go commercial versus residential. So you do need to take off the interest expense unless you're paying for the whole thing in cash. But as you can see there, it's pretty much spot on $50,000 in net profit per annum from this project before the cost of interest from the bank. However, thanks to the RBA, that cost just went down a little bit more. So look, with the standard interest rates that are around at the moment, the net return of this, if I had the debt, so there's $600,000 in debt on this one, servicing that debt, if I had nothing in the offset account at any point in time, the net profit for this would be somewhere between $25,000 to $30,000 a year positive cash flow. Got a question there. Are real estate agents willing to manage these and what do they charge? Great question, coming to that very shortly. So you can see in here things that I've included. So agents, fees and commissions, you can see that's pretty high. Insurance, rental property, they're very specific insurance. You cannot use normal insurers on this. Rates and water, rental expenses. The expectation in this accommodation is that you provide everything. Water, electricity, internet, gas if need be, everything. So that rental includes everything for them. They don't need to set up anything when they get there. It's just there. Whoops, sorry. And down the bottom, other things which are a bit unusual. So fees and licensing, where we have, I think I've bundled all into rental expenses. So yeah, there are regular fire inspections, the yard maintenance, they're all paid for by the landlord and included in the rent. So it is literally they pay the rent and that's the only thing that they have to pay. So income is gross 77,000, rental expenses about 22. Anyway, you can see what's going on there. So the cash on cash return for this one, because I created that cheap land, is about 23%, which is obviously, well, I'm very happy with it. It's I consider to be a very good result. Question: who is the insurer? Cannot remember off the top of my head. Yes, I cannot remember off the top of my head. What I would suggest, just to get the most recent thing. So I'm my property manager is QPSR. If you speak to QPSR, they will recommend a broker. Again, I can't remember the broker's name because it's about 18 months ago. And at the moment, I'm pretty sure there is only one insurer actually insuring these things because others have pulled out. Now, I did have to condense my thing and I got rid of the slide about the property manager, so I will address that. So yes, the property management of these is not the same as standard residential, and I would definitely not suggest having a standard rental agent dealing with these, because at the end of the day, they are the guys that will monitor and manage that your fire requirements are being met and various other requirements are being met. So if you go with a normal rental agent, they're not going to know anything about that stuff. These are very different to a normal rental property. So you do need, again, a good team around you that specializes in this. I would stress that point is because these are fantastic if you set them up right. But if you went with a builder, for example, that didn't know what they were doing, they can completely stuff you over by building a slightly incorrect product. Not a bad product, just one that doesn't actually fit the regulations. For example, I think one of the other strange rules is you They can have a microwave in there, but you're not allowed to build a microwave provision. Go figure. Yeah, there's all these little bits and pieces. So the rental managers, there are a few around that specialize in this style of property. And I mean, I just mentioned who I'm with, QPSR, Queensland Property Sales and Rentals. They do specialize in this style of property. There are a couple of others as well. Certainly something you want to pay close attention to and investigate a lot before you choose one. For me, QPSR was a standout, but look, others might have different opinions. Another question. These little things don't need a common area. So when does a common area apply? Yes, they do need a common area. So I'm not sure what you mean by these little things don't need a common area. They do need a common area. So you'll notice with ours, there was the 5 bedrooms, and then there was the common area, which also had the washing machine and a full kitchen. Mind you, when I left for Switzerland in November, which was quite a while after it had been rented, there was still that foam sheet inside the oven that was put there that comes with it when it's brand new, so still no one had actually used the full kitchen. But then other guys have had theirs where the kitchens are getting used all the time. Do you foresee a point in the near future where we reach saturation of mini boarding houses in the market? Any thoughts around this? Yeah, look, good question, Finn. I mean, obviously, I don't have a crystal ball. I can only work on an educated guess. There are a lot of these getting put up. That being said, there still appears to be a very large demand in the correct areas. So, you know, there are a few areas now where apparently there are a number of these just within a few streets of each other, particularly on the south side. You know, there's a guy from Sydney who I think he sold out of a company and is cashed up and is just building them left, right, and centre. So yeah, there are a lot of these popping up. So yes, you do need to be careful of the areas that you choose to put them in. But I think it's an opportunity like anything. It's, you know, there's the timing of the entry into it. Of course, at some point, you know, there'll become a point where they become less feasible, but, you know, that potentially could be driven more by land prices than necessarily saturation in areas at this point in time. But, you know, yeah, look, I wouldn't go build one of these if there was, you know, 3 within, you know, 2 streets of it. But that's all in your choice of where you build them. Can you stop people from building them near you? No, you can't. But again, that's why you always work with conservative numbers. Hope that helps there. Do we need to subdivide if we have got room for 2 buildings? Good question. I was actually discussing this recently with a colleague because we were looking, because, you know, some of us you know, plan on buying splitters and you know, maybe building one but not building the second one. It's not a straightforward answer, and I can't give you the exact answer on that. Actually, well, let me rephrase that. If it's a property on one lot, so if you bought 810 square meter block of land and it's on one lot, then I do not believe that you can build 2 of these on that block of land. If you have a splitter, so it's a property on one title, but it already has 2 lots, I can't give you the exact answer there as to whether you need to actually register that second title or not, but there's certainly more flexibility there, and there's a bit of a timing thing there. But yes, if you buy an 810 square meter lot, you can't just go and build 2 houses on it. Okay, so that does bring me to the end of that presentation. Is there any other questions specific to well, I guess to anything actually, to Drew's presentation? Obviously, I can't give you accounting advice, but practical advice I may be able to give you, or relating to the boarding houses, or anything else at all, I suppose. It is, after all, only 12:15 in the afternoon my time, so I've got plenty of energy. Depreciation estimate. When you build one, they will give you the depreciation schedule. Couldn't tell you off the top of my head what it is. It's, you know, 2 years ago or so that I built mine. So yeah, like any new property, it's going to be pretty handy. And obviously with these, you do have a lot of wet areas and there's a lot of fridges and bits and pieces. So It's probably a bit more than your standard sort of property. But look, like any cash flow property, I would look at your depreciation as a bonus as opposed to a key factor in your decision-making process. Any contact for AHC? Your best is actually just to Google them, affordable housing company, and you put in an inquiry there, and that will take you to the right person depending on your inquiry. I will say they are very slow at response. Bottom line, because they're getting smashed. They are, building a lot of these, so naturally they have to, I guess, shift their time towards the people that actually have active bills, because there's a lot of people naturally inquiring on these because they're interesting that never go ahead with them. So just keep that in mind with your timeframes. I am a previous customer that has built one, and I sent through an inquiry and asked for some plans for a particular block about a month ago, and I think it was about 10 days later that I got a response. So if you get a response faster than 10 days, you're doing well. Is 400 square meters or 405 minimum lot size? No, there's nothing to say you can't go smaller. Just keep in mind that the smaller you go, that low sets become not an option. Then you are required to go to the high sets. Your low sets are by far your cheapest. Your low sets typically anywhere from about 350,000. There are some examples of less. Young's just credits one of his science projects, which ended up being less and is now fully rented. But 350 is there for their normal designs for the low set, and anywhere up to 450, which is your high set. Now, if you do the furniture package, which I did, allow another 20 grand on top of that, fully furnish the place. What bookkeeping software do you use, and do you use a bookkeeper? Great question. So Xero, and absolutely yes, I use a bookkeeper. It was something I hesitated on for a while at the start, but again, think of your team. This is not an individual thing, and if you're spending all your time doing your BASs and all that sort of stuff, you are not doing the stuff that is making you money. Bottom line. So yes, I personally highly encourage people to get a bookkeeper. The more you can take off your desk, the better. Now, the one asterisk on that is that means you've actually got to go do some stuff. If you go and incur a whole bunch more costs because you've gone and set yourself up with this and that and blah, 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 and then you actually don't go out there and do your KPIs and do the groundwork to actually get yourself a project, that's not going to work out too well. So, yep, if you're an action taker and you're actually doing stuff, definitely go get yourself a bookkeeper, I would suggest. Especially with developments, it's not that straightforward. I didn't in my first few projects, and yeah, I spent, looking back now, I spent way too much time doing that. Probably did it wrong, probably missed out on some tax deductions. So, where was I saving myself money? I probably wasn't. Okay, well, we are about to hit time. So unless there's any other final questions, we'll start to wrap it up. So I guess a few notes from me. So everyone on here has completed the boot camp. If there is anyone that does have questions around the Diamond program, well, feel free to throw some at me now if you like. But we are running out of time, so they would be quick responses. Otherwise, best is to contact the office, and then either myself or probably Young would get in touch with you and answer any questions you got. And yeah, no worries, Simon. You're very welcome. Valerie, you too. Been a pleasure. For me, I actually get even more out of these currently because this is like my link back to Australia. And I've actually just spent a few days in quarantine because a friend of ours tested positive, which meant by association we had to go into quarantine. So human contact right now is at a premium for me. So thank you very much. None of you realize, even though I didn't get to actually hear your voices, how much this has been appreciated. When is the next boot camp? I can't answer that one, I am afraid. Yeah, I'm not up to date on those dates. Contact the office for that, but I'm pretty sure there is one coming up, I think towards the end of the month, but definitely don't quote me on that, but there is one coming up. Contact the office and they can let you know. Is the Diamond fee payable each year? Yeah, it's not a one-off, so no, it's not a lifetime membership or anything like that. To be perfectly honest, I couldn't tell you what the current structure is, how that works. The fee side of things is definitely something to have a chat to Young about. But yeah, it's definitely not a pay one thing and then you're a lifetime member sort of scenario, because there is a lot of resources that goes into the diamonds each and every year, and that just would not be feasible to do it that way. So it's a very personalized program, but at the same time, there's a lot of benefit from the association, as in the people that are around you. If you think of the rule of choose the people that you spend, the 5 or 7 people that you spend the most amount of time with, and find the average of their income, and that'll be yours. Well, if you take that consideration and then think of the diamond group, where there are many people making hundreds of thousands, some breaking into the millions each year, that's you think of the power of that association. Instead of being that one person in your friend group that's doing deals and they think you're either wonderful or unusual. I felt a bit of both early days. They all thought I was a bit nuts when I said I was going to leave my job. Then take that to your community and the people you're spending time with in your association being people that are all doing deals. And if you're not doing one, you're now the unusual one. Imagine the sort of power that that association has with you. So that's also one of the big benefits. All right, very welcome, Jan and Nathan. Thanks very much, guys. I'll stay here for another minute if anyone else has got any other questions, but otherwise we will wind this up. It's been a pleasure. I hope it gave you value. And above all, guys, take action. All right, take action, take action, take action. None of this means anything if you don't take action. It's just, something interesting and exciting, but makes no difference unless you take action. So thanks again, guys. I'll stay on.